Hello and welcome to the Spinneyhead podcast. Today I'm going to be reading from a short story I wrote a few years ago called Source. This one came about as kind of a reaction to all of those alien invasion movies where it's always the American government and the US military who get thrust on us as our saviours. And if you've looked at the history of the American government and the American military over the years, that's probably not a great idea. So this time, someone else gets to make first contact and be given the inside story and all of the secret technology. If you like this, I'll stick a link down below and you can go and buy books by me, writing as myself, or under my pen name of Garth Owen. There's also a Patreon where I'll be putting up stories and videos and audio and other files early, so you can get access to those sooner than other people. Into the story. Source. The robot crashed through the shopping centre's domed roof. It couldn't have made a more spectacular or deadly entrance if it had planned. Shattered glass and twisted steel flew outward to cut and impale shoppers on 2 levels. The dying machine crashed into the fountain below the glass ceiling, reducing it to rubble. One flailing arm connected with a golden dolphin statue and sent it flying. Mike Taylor had turned at the crash and screaming, but it was the gilded sea mammal tumbling end over end towards him that caught his attention. He watched it, working out its trajectory. It might not hit him, but it would land close by. He grabbed the girl he had been talking to about gym membership and pulled her aside. The statue bounced once on the tiled floor and then hit one end of the display that it had been stood by. The rest of the structure swung round and swatted Mike and the girl into the cover of an escalator. There was a rumble, and everything went dark. He was shaken back into consciousness by the girl, trapped under him. He rolled off her and slapped at the dust caked on his sleeve. Sorry. I think you saved my life, so, you know. Beyond the cover of the escalator, the floor was covered in rubble and the air full of dust. There was a crash and a rumble, and a denser cloud of dust obscured the short distance across the nearest shop front. That's happened a couple of times, the girl said. I think there's something big moving around out there. Like what? Like vehicles? There was a smaller clump and a shuffling sound of something pushing through the rubble. Like something with feet, the girl replied. Mike ducked around the edge of the escalator, but could see nothing through the dust. Then there was another scrape, and something obscured the light coming through the hole in the roof. Something large and ovoid moved towards him. 3 arms extended, and red laser light danced through the clouds. A dot skipped across the floor toward him. Shit! He ducked back in just before it reached him. What the hell is that? Let's get the fuck out of here. I'm with you on that. Mike, by the way. She didn't understand for a moment. Oh, Sally. They edged away from the sounds of movement, trying to use the escalator as cover. I don't want to join a gym. You just looked so bored. If I was on commission, I'd be offended. Fire exit. Sally pointed out a sign glowing green through the dust. Do you think we can make it? There was another crash. An impact so heavy it knocked them both off their feet. Blue and purple light flickered from the wreckage and then something bounced across the floor to rest beside them. It was a torn metal shell, the crown of an ovoid robot. There was a clatter of metal tumbling over, then silence. Mike and Sally looked at each other, each willing the other to be the first to say something. He offered his hand and she took it, going with him as he stood and turned. There was another shape in the grey light now. It had multiple limbs, 8 tentacle-like arms and 4 legs. It stood over the truncated remains of the fallen robot like a child's drawing of Shiva as an octopus, adding a blue glow to the light from the hole in the roof. As Mike and Sally approached, it tried to pull up to its full height, but staggered as 2 of its legs buckled. They rushed toward their saviour. The creature was shorter than the robot had been, and significantly slimmer. It had a spherical head dotted all around with what could only be eyes, but no obvious nostrils or mouth. Below this there was a symbol on what could be best called the chest. It glowed a silvery blue and seemed to be circling through every crop circle ever. The tentacles had hands on the ends, 2 multi-jointed grasping fingers and 3 shorter opposing ones. As Mike and Sally drew closer, 2 of the arms unfurled, and the grasping fingers wrapped around their wrists. The grip was firm but not painful. They tried to pull away, but they were held fast. As they watched, the creature split into two. Two creatures, now with 2 legs and arms each. One held Mike and the other Sally. Each had a smaller version of the crop circle icon on its chest, and they each reached for it and peeled it off, then rapidly swiped it onto the chest of their captive. The icons burned through their clothes and adhered to their skin with a strange and discomforting lack of sensation. The creatures released their grips and collapsed into a pile like dropped hosepipe. Mike and Sally hadn't let go of each other's hands through the whole exchange. They stepped back. "Fuck," said Mike, as eloquent as he could manage. Something was working its way under their skin, away from where the icons had hit their chests. But that didn't get their attention now. They stared around at the destruction, finally seeing the bodies and blood. "Oh, God." Sally stepped close to Mike. "How many?" 65 that I can detect. Detect? These things are doing something to us. I can sense so many things. Yes, I'm getting it now. Electricity, structures, infrared. They turn to each other. There's another robot. Without even thinking about it, they jumped up through the hole in the roof. From the vantage point, they could look down on the terrified crowds and emergency vehicles in the vast car park. There, another large ovoid robot stood amongst the wrecked cars, tearing them to pieces. Armed police were approaching it, even though they didn't know what to do when they got within firing range. Mike could feel the static of an energy weapon charging up, and zoomed in to see the stubby gun shape rising above the crown of the robot. He could also sense the protective energy field that had suddenly formed around Sally and himself. Information he could never previously have imagined comprehending was available to him as well, as if he had just developed a dozen more senses. "You destroy it, and I'll keep people safe," Sally told him. They finally let go of each other's hands before shooting across the roof at bullet pace. It was a long way from the edge of the roof to the far car park where the robot was wreaking havoc, but they knew they could make it. Mike pushed off and formed a Superman pose, fists out in front of him, heading straight for the robot. Sally deliberately jumped shorter so she could land between the police and the robot. Mike imagined a wedge forming in front of him and saw it take shape. It wasn't quite right. He changed it to taper from a single point just before he hit the robot. The shell buckled, and a seam somewhere began to tear, but Mike didn't break all the way through to the inner workings. He bounced back from the impact as the robot toppled over. They both rolled and came back up in fighting stances. The stubby gun traversed and pointed at Mike. "Think fast," he told himself. "Think mirror." The shimmering blue field formed concave in front of the weapon, reflecting most of the blast back. Hot plasma found its way through the burst seams and destroyed less hardened components inside the shell. There was the sad sound of mechanisms powering down, and the robot's 3 legs went limp. The body clanged to the ground, tottered for a moment, then keeled over to crush a burning car. Mike stepped back, staring at the destruction around him. He'd just jumped in as if it were any old level of a video game, no thought for his own safety, just the need to kill the boss and move on. Now that the reality of the situation was sinking in, he felt exhilarated. Sally walked backwards to meet him, watching the crescent of police surround them. They haven't put their guns down. Can you blame them? Think what we must look like. We may look human, but we just did a bunch of superhuman shit right in front of them. Oh, and we're naked? Mike looked down. Bloody hell, when did that happen? I really don't know. But not only are they facing a pair of superhumans, one of them is obviously horny. Sally took Mike's hand and turned to him. Shall we slip off to somewhere more comfortable? Yes. Let's. And they disappeared. Sometime later, they sat together in a crater and watched the earth rise. I don't think anyone's done that before, announced Sally. Neil Armstrong would be pissed off if he knew what we've just done to his footprints. You understand that I don't have sex on the moon with just anyone, especially not if I've known them for less than an hour. I think today can be counted as special circumstances. Sally traced the symbol on her chest. It had stopped cycling and settled on one configuration when they had arrived at the lunar surface, but now it shifted and 3 crescents appeared on the left. A holographic screen appeared in front of them. Each symbol represents a different function. Your tattoo seems to have different symbols to mine for some functions. I asked it some questions while you were asleep. I was asleep? You may be a Superman, but yeah, still a man. Sorry, I'll try harder next time. Harder wasn't the problem. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. I asked some questions about these tattoos, about everything. Short story is that we've just become involved in a galactic war. The creatures that gave us the tattoos are under attack by a swarm of self-replicating robots. They don't know where the robots came from, but they're eating their way around the edge of a civilization of dozens of races. The Earth is right in the path of one of the flanking arms of robots. The creatures we met were here to see if we were sufficiently advanced to fend for ourselves against the robot attack. We're not. Before they could report back, they were attacked by a scouting party of robots. There are another 100 or so robo-corpses between Mars and where they crashed to Earth. The aliens were mortally wounded, but they can pass on their exoskeleton weapons system to any creatures they come in contact with. When they saw us holding hands, they must have presumed that we melded together the same way they do, and chose us to inherit their power. So, we're Earth's last best hope. The screen showed the locations of shattered robots receding into space. Mike tugged the panel until it overlaid the landscape in front of them. Hardly. Between us, we might just be able to take on 100 or so of those robots, but there are billions of them in the main form, with motherships and everything. We need to bring the rest of the planet up to near this level before the main body arrives. There are plans for the shields, weapons, and flight systems stored in the tattoo. They work from first principles onwards. And there are dead robots to scavenge from. That should help kickstart things. Mike zoomed in on the nearest robot. You could get to it in a few minutes. But who do we give the technology to? What do you mean? Well, who would you trust with it? The United States would hoard the technology or use it to start another stupid war. Russia would try to get back all the former Soviet republics. China would clamp down on human rights and close its borders. And they're just the three most powerful. The smaller countries could be worse, if anything. And the UN isn't as powerful or as independent as it ought to be. France? Mike suggested with a grin. Maybe, but can you imagine just how arrogant they would be about it? They chuckled, then subsided into quiet thought. Mike took over control of the screen to bring up the schematic Sally had told him about. They were presented as diagrams and symbols, readable in any language. Open source, he said in the end. What? We give the technology to everyone and let them do what they want with it. You're right that we can't trust any government, so we bypass them and give the technology straight to the citizens. How? Careful seeding of the technology. There are 100 robots. The British government already has 3 and 2 dead aliens. We drop the rest around the world. One on the White House lawn, just to take the piss, the rest where we think they'll be found by the right people. Then we go to the universities and leave the plans where the nosiest students can find them. And finally, we release them on the internet. We'll have to find a way to get the greater story out as well, so people will start working together to prepare a defence. Yeah, that'll work. Better than trusting any politicians to get anything done anyway. You're a geek, aren't you? Afraid so. I guess I can learn to live with it. And another story that has many potentials for a future tale to spin out from it, but that I quite like just as itself. Thank you for listening. Check out the links below for books by myself, Ian Pattinson, and by my pen name, Garth Owen, and the Patreon and various other links. Goodbye till next time.